I got to ask you, has your wife gotten that apology from so many
Yeah,
years
right.
ago?
Yeah, no, that's never going to happen. So, yeah, look, I mean, he went after her on Twitter while he was president of the United States. It just shows you how declassed he is as a human being. But he's back. This was a malpractice by the Democrats. This was a intergenerational transfer that could have been appropriately handled well over a year ago. But Joe Biden and Lady Macbeth, Jill Biden, they decided that they wanted to cling to power way too long, frankly, and they caused this problem. Should be no reason why he's wreaking havoc on us again. But Adam, we got 207 more weeks to go. Okay, so we'll have to see what happens over the next 207 weeks. But sort of a ridiculous start to a presidency, frankly. I am amazed that there's no dissent. I'm amazed that the Republicans, smart Republicans, are not dissenting. And I'm amazed that there's no real organized dissent from the Democrats. I feel like you guys, my message to Democrats, you only lost by 1.2%. I mean, come on, guys. You're treating him like if Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan had a baby and it's Donald Trump. I mean, come on, guys. He won by a couple of percent, not even. Fight
Yeah.
back.
I want to keep talking with you about Trump because you know him in ways that a lot of people don't. And you don't underestimate him, which I think a lot of people do. And I want to make sure that we get also, because you have an economic background that people want to, pick your brain. You founded the SALT conference, which is coming up in May. We want to talk a little bit about that. I still owe you an apology. Years ago at Yahoo, I never believed crypto would take off, and you corrected me, called me out on air. But we got to stick a little bit with Trump. And one of the things you've pointed out, and I took this from you, is that people do underestimate him. Not too long ago, you talked about the infighting within the White House. You were in Davos when you said this just recently. You talked about the infighting among the Trump people, but then you pointed out that Trump really isn't MAGA. What is it that people miss about him? Because you know him personally.
Well, MAGA is sort of the populist movement. MAGA is lower and middle income people who, frankly, have some justification. They feel left out of the system. Lower and middle income people over the last 30 years haven't really gained anything in terms of real wages. They feel economically desperational. This is a group of people 50 years ago that once felt economically aspirational. But frankly, the system, poor governmental economics, inflation, which is the worst form of regressive taxation, has hurt these people. And, Trump supposedly represents them, but he never does anything for them. So, yes, he provides an outlet for their anger and he shows up at these different rallies. But if you just see his inauguration, he's hanging out with billionaires. He's currying favor with them. He's inviting them to Mar-a-Lago to kiss his ring. He's focused on tax cuts for corporations. Looks like he got paid handsomely to switch his position on TikTok. And so Trump, when I say he's not MAGA, Trump is for Donald Trump. And if it works for Donald Trump, great. I mean, I don't know. Is it MAGA to launch a meme coin 48 hours before you ascend to the most important job in the world, the American presidency? I mean, so he's not what he says he is. But here's the thing about his followers. They see him as their last hope. They see him as an avatar for their anger, and they'll cling to him. And he said something a few years ago, Adam, which I agree with. He says he could shoot people on Fifth Avenue, and his support base would not diminish at all. It feels that way.
When you say it's working for him, I think the bigger question though is, will it work for the country? Because there are some things. I mean, you're in favor of some of the crypto deregulation that might come with the Trump administration. Overall, will the Trump administration and what happens over the next 4 years work for the country?
Okay, so remember this with Donald Trump. You get the entire buffet table. It's not Trump a la carte. You can't take the positive crypto or maybe the tax cut, or if you like some type of favorable treatment, or if you're in an industry where he's tariffing your international competitors, you may like those selective things in his policy mix, but you get everything. You get the grift, you get the flipping on a dime on something like TikTok, you get the meme coin registration for himself and for Melania Trump, you get the bellicosity of rhetoric. It looks like he stopped payments for Medicaid. I guess the judge just reversed that. He stopped payments for healthcare grants, Medicaid, all different types of spending. And so, listen, you get the whole thing with him. And so my guess is some of these things are positive and some of these things will work out. But a lot of these things are very negative. And one of the things that's negative is the coarseness. So if you're going to be flying people around on military planes, you could deport people on charter planes for $8,500, or you could deport people on military planes for $850,000. And I think he's doing the latter as a form of symbolism and a form of demonstration of American hardness or American cruelty. So I don't like it. I think the American people over time will grind out of that. I don't see them liking it, but maybe I'm wrong. It has polled well, the deportations. If you ask people about deportations, they want them, but I don't know if they necessarily are going to want this sort of gruesome way to handle things. We've got children in inner cities that are hiding, fearful to go to school. I don't know if this is the right message we should be sending to people. This stuff will impact markets, by the way, Adam. Markets don't like fear. Markets don't like uncertainty. So keep it up, and you'll see the markets, correct themselves. And Trump will be like, okay, well, what am I doing?
Well, let me ask you about this, because you're going to get some questions from the guests, and I bet they're going to ask about Trump. But let me ask you about this. Let's talk about markets. I think the S&P 500 up 26% in 2024. It was up 27% in 2023. Now we're in this kind of new year, 2025. Everyone's talking AI. That's where you and I crossed paths again back in November. And where are we headed with this? And could this administration crash the economy? I mean, kill the golden goose?
Well, listen, we got to talk factually. I mean, the economy was heading in the right trajectory. The inflation numbers were coming down. Economic growth relative to the rest of the world was quite strong. The stock market, as you just pointed out, two of the best years in the last 30 for the stock market. So things were trending in the right direction. And could they stay in the right direction? I do think so. I think one of the great ironies of American politics, the economy is situational and cyclical, Adam, but we have a tendency to personalize things that are situational. So if it goes into recession under Trump's watch, it's Donald Trump's recession. If it booms under Donald Trump, it's Donald Trump's boom, when in fact it may have gone into recession or gone into a boom related to general cyclicality in the overall market. So I do think, however, on the margin, the government can impact confidence. The government can impact interest rates. The government could cause a trade war. We know from our economic history that trade wars are very destructive, and they steepen recessionary activity. So there are things that could happen to weaken the economy. I think the economy is strong right now. We've got this AI scare that's taken place as a result of something that China just launched. They're claiming that they've created the same type of Chat GPT product for a fraction of the cost of Chat GPT. I don't know if that's necessarily true or not. I mean, it's very hard to get the straight scoop from the Chinese. But having said that, I think they stun people because we have blocked some chips. We have blocked some, we've sanctioned them in terms of some export controls on some of the most valuable chips. And it appears from this angle that perhaps they've replicated some of those chips, or they've made similar chips internal in China. And so this speaks to their economic prowess. It speaks to their work ethic and their creativity and engineering ingenuity. And so I think this rocked people because the expectation was that we were way ahead of them in AI, and we're probably not as far ahead as we would like to think. So having said that, I think that sorts itself out in the market. I think ultimately, if Donald Trump pursues a trade war, if Donald Trump is, I guess, going to take Greenland by military force and disavow the treaty that we have, the NATO treaty, and go after Denmark, who's been a ally of ours, I guess, for 150 plus years, and certainly since the end of the Second World War, I think it's going to cause havoc in the society. Adam, unfortunately for you and me, we're getting up there, right? I mean, I'm older than you, and I'll just say this to the younger people that listen to your program. America when I was a kid in my 20s, traveling in Europe was incredibly well regarded. America was generally, despite the Vietnam War and some miscues by America, it was generally considered to be a benevolent force in the world, a peacekeeping force, a country that was in the fight with other freedom-loving countries in the Alliance for Western liberal democracies and the Alliance for Freedom. It doesn't feel like that anymore. There's a coarseness and there's a hardening of America that's coming from this leadership, and I don't know if that's going to serve America long term. I think why break something that took 80 years to cultivate, this relationship that America has had with the rest of the world?